And thank you for letting me share my experiences with you. I really appreciate it. I've been excited about doing this. Just a little bit of housekeeping stuff is that stop me with any time if you want. Just raise your hand, and I'd be happy. I'd love this to be as interactive as I can. I thought what I'd do is go through a little bit of a presentation myself and then open it up for questions afterwards. And I'll just start with, let's make sure I got this right, but I'll just start with my history. You know, I watched a couple, I didn't know quite what this was going to be like, and I'd watched a couple of the presentations that are online, so I saw Wayne give long introductions of people, and I said, Doc, don't do that for me. You know, is that I'll speak to it myself, and I hope I don't bore you with it. But I, like you, you know, I graduated here from the University of Florida in 1969. I, like you, you know, is that I was sitting in a place wondering what I was going to do in life and where I would end up, and wondered about that, and whether or not school was going to be helpful for me. Was I going to be successful? Where would I end up? And I started out, I was lucky enough to, it was Vietnam War, 1969, and when I got out of school, there was a draft, and that was the thing that I was looking forward to. That's what was going to happen to me. So I actually went out and applied and joined the Air Force and became a pilot in the Air Force. So in September of the year that I graduated, I knew what I was going to do, which was a great relief. And I know for a lot of you out there who haven't found a position yet or doing whatever, you're still there with it. I went in the Air Force. I ended up getting out. My last station was in Europe, in Holland, and came back here to Florida. And I had actually at that time, because I had watched the Air Force change and watched what politics had done to the Air Force, I had planned on going into law school in September of that year. This was 1975. I got out in January, and I went back to my parents' home, and because I didn't have a place in the U.S., and I stayed there for a couple of weeks, and I said, I can't take it till September. I got to go do something. So I'm going to go out, and I'm going to look for a job temporarily, and then I'll go into school in September. I ended up interviewing with a savings and loan in Daytona Beach, Florida, and during that interview, the guy that was interviewing me was a ex-Navy submarine nuclear captain, nuclear submarine, and he asked me the question. He said, what do you want to do? You know, we don't really have job openings here, but we're interviewing people. Someone had referred me to him, and I said, I want to get into management. He said, well, we don't have any management openings. You know, we got cashiers, and we've got savings desk people, and we've got people who are, but we don't have a management program. I said, look, you hire me, and you'll pay me. He asked me the question, what are you expecting financially? And I said, you hire me, and you'll pay me what I'm worth later. I said, just hire me. I am going to speak a lot about luck in this little presentation, but I was lucky because I felt like, just like the pressure that had gone away when I knew what I was going to do my senior year of college, I was lucky that I didn't have pressure on me because I had a plan for September. I was looking for something in the interim, so I answered that question that way. What that did, it taught me a lesson. It taught me the lesson was, don't make decisions, don't go out there and do something in life that you make decisions and answer them under pressure because you think that's the way people want you to hear it. And be comfortable enough that you can do that. I hadn't planned to have that answer. I answered it that way. They hired me. 3 months later, they lost a branch manager, the largest branch. They put me over there in charge of that. It was a branch that had people who had been working there for 15 or 20 years. I reorganized it. a year later, I was doing so well, when September came around, I said, hey, I'm going to do this another year, because I was learning a lot. I was learning about real estate and loans, and that's what savings and loans did back then. A year and a half later, they put me in charge of a savings and loan that they bought in my hometown of Winter Park, Florida. So here I was, a year and a half out, and I was replacing the president of that savings and loan. I was in the savings and loan business. 2 years after that, the law changed in Florida. Savings and loans could have branches, but banks couldn't. And the banks reached out to me, a local bank, and said, would you take over and be in charge of our branch banking? You've already run branches and you know how to do that. It was called Combank of Winter Park, which is now merged into a bunch of other banks. I went with that bank, and I also went on their board of directors for their lending company because I had been in the lending side of the business. I did that for 2 years, and then I decided, hey, I know this as well as the guys sitting across the table from me who are making lots of bucks. I know their business as well as they do because I go through the criteria of loaning them the money to do all of these projects that they're making lots of bucks on. So I ended up going out and on my own and got into development. Unbeknownst to me, the first real estate cycle was coming 4 years later, 5 years later. And in 1983, I went from being a guy that was doing well, driving nice cars, living the good life, to a guy who had nothing. I finished a condo project when the interest rates were 21%, and my customer was going to be the very people who are trying to sell their larger homes to get into a smaller condo downtown Winter Park, Florida. And on 500 deposits, I had 3 closings. I learned a big lesson back then. So I took some time off. I was going to go down and live in Colombia, South America for 3 months because I'd been an exchange student down there and I knew some people there, and I ended up managing a coconut plantation for another year over that year and 3 months, and left to come back. I said, look, it's time for me to come back. And I started looking in Denver, Colorado, because the cycle had still gone so bad. I said, look, I know that I can get into a business there that I can get into that is very depressed in pricing. What I do need to do is I need to have cash flow out of that business. And I started looking around. Well, someone sent me an article in Condé Nast that was talking about a place called Telluride, Colorado. I said, I need to go look there too. Sounds like a nice place. And I ended up being there for 6 months and negotiating the purchase of a hotel on the river in Telluride, Colorado ended up closing on that for 2% down, of which I could put it all back into the property, and it was owned by a savings and loan in Waterloo, Iowa that was going under. And closed in September of 1986. That hotel, I knew that the management was stealing from it, so I knew that I could generate cash flow right away. I bought it at a very cheap price with a partner. I didn't have money enough to buy that myself. And my partner happened to have 10 condos that he had just bought and needed someone to manage those. So I said, look, I'll do that and I'll manage the hotel. The first day that I got there, I let everyone go and I was everything. I was the housekeeper. I was the front desk. I was the reservations person. I was the maintenance guy. I said, I don't want anyone here. I've got to, and I'd use my experience that I'd learned earlier in the savings and loan business, that you don't want to have the wrong people around you. You just don't want to have that happen. That grew into a vacation rental business that in 1998, we were one of the 11 companies that did an IPO. We went public on the New York Stock Exchange, and I thought I was retired in 1998. Well, after hanging around for a bit, I did go on the town council. I got involved in politics and did all that. I said, I've got to get back into something. I started a Mailboxes, Etc., which is now the UPS store. Some of you may remember Mailboxes, Etc. I did that from ground up. I packaged in tape boxes, and I put in the QuickBooks Pro, and I did all of that. And was that that was a particularly good experience for me. That was my first sort of, it was really my third startup that I'd done, but in the retail business, it taught me a lot. I ended up being asked to come back into operations in ResortQuest, was the name of the company we did the IPO roll-up, and we sold that to Gaylord Entertainment in 2003. I then thought that I was finished. I ended up going out of that and going and doing a startup vacation rental and real estate company in St. Simons Island, Georgia, called Hodnett Cooper. And I recently just sold last year my interest in that business out. During that period, I was asked, had found out that ResortQuest was for sale. We ended up buying it back from that public company, Gaylord, and we sold it into Wyndham in 2010, and then shortly after that I was hired to be the CEO of Joe. I failed to mention that during my period in Winter Park and Development Whatever that I was in the restaurant business. We had a 200-seat restaurant with bar and disco in that. That was more of an ego buy, I think, than it started off as a real estate buy, but we took the building and put it under a 50-year lease, and then we decided we were good enough to run the restaurant, which was a mistake. I described that as spending 90% of my time making 10% of my revenue. For those of you who want to get in the restaurant business, I'm going to give you my email at the end, and you can call me about it. And then this last August, I stepped down as the CEO of St. Joe, and I'm still on the consulting agreement with them for a number of years. But and then I was asked, ran into Matt earlier, and he said, "Why don't you come participate in the group here?" So I'm excited to be here. Again, any questions, you can stop me and whatever. What I wanted to do, and I was thinking about this, and I was saying to myself, look, if I've been in the real estate business, I've been a Florida real estate broker since the mid-'70s. You know, I'm an active Colorado, I've been an active Colorado, and I hold an active Georgia real estate license. Is that I can speak to real estate, but I'd rather that be more the interactive piece of the presentation, or this time that we spend together. I'd like to tell you a little bit, since I've been in these startup businesses. I bought 34 companies when I was with ResortQuest and we were expanding. You are all going to end up in business in some form or fashion. You're going to own some of you are going to own your own businesses. Some of you are going to be in leadership of businesses that are, large public companies. You're all going to be out there, and no matter what, whether it's real estate or something else that you end up in, because you never know. My degree was history. So how did I get here? How did I get to where I am today? Is that you never know what's going to happen. You just have to take advantage of and be ready. The one thing I will tell you is you've got to be good at what you do, and you got to work hard. If you don't do that, you're not going to make it, at least to where your aspirations should be, because you're in a great school here, and you spend a lot of time learning from great people that you all have the opportunity to do way beyond what I've done. And luck will be a big part of what happens. I never knew that I only went in the Air Force because I wanted to get away from walking on the ground in Vietnam. I never knew that I was going to get in the savings loan business. I just lucked out because I ended up at a place where at the right time. I never knew that I was going to be in the vacation rental business, but I just fell into it because a partner of mine had condos. But what I always did was I worked very hard, and my work ethic was I always try to be better than everyone else. And by being better than everyone else was not an ego trip. It was just, I knew that somebody would see it. Somebody would see it and say, I recognize that thing. Because the one thing I can tell you, my whole experience and all the people that I've had work in the companies I've been in, you're always looking for good people. You are. It's not like there's a bunch out there. There's some people that they're in the job for a paycheck, or they've been there for years, and they don't change. They don't adapt to what's happening out there. you get out there and you get recognized for that, you'll be seen. So I was telling a group earlier that when I got the savings and loan job, I always made sure my car was the first one in the parking lot in the morning. Just did something. I always made sure that it was the last one there at the evening, because that company had been in business for 35, 40 years, and everybody left at 4:45, and everybody came in right at 9 o'clock. Well, I was learning, I was enjoying the job, I was doing whatever, but hey, they knew it was my car out there, and senior leadership in the company, they realized it too. They looked. I think the interview also took him a little bit, because he repeated that to a bunch of people. That, hey, that's the guy that just told me that. So I said to myself, look, I'm going to give you a little bit, and I've got this list, and I handed it out, or you should have it in front of you. I call it your personal bull face. Now, why did I say that? Oh, it hasn't been handed out yet. All right. And there's some potential questions that you might want to ask me at the end, or come up with your own. When we were in the Air Force, and this is one thing that I learned, besides a strong work ethic and being good at what you do, or being better than what you do, what I learned, we had what we called as pilots, bold-faced items. And a bold-faced item was when something went wrong in the plane, you had to be able to react quickly, do these things based on what happened, and react to them quickly. If you didn't, what got bad is going to get a lot worse. And I toyed with telling you this story, but I'm going to tell you one Air Force story, if you don't mind. Is that we had a bold-faced item that was called stick forward, rudder and ailerons neutral. If not, this is when you went out of control. If not in control, maintain full forward stick and deploy the drag chute. We had a drag chute that every time we landed, we would deploy, because it'd slow us down and we didn't have to use our brakes as much. Well, I had with me the flight surgeon that day, who was flying in the back seat, and I was out on an air combat mission with another fellow pilot. We were training, and we'd been spread apart 20 miles, and we were brought together by radar, and then it was whoever got behind the other one. And this was over the North Sea. The North Sea in the winter is like 32 degrees. It's just at freezing. Your ability to survive in that water is maybe a minute or two before you can't move anymore. So we're over the North Sea, because you didn't want to be flying supersonic over land and doing all the booms and stuff. And we were out there flying, and we came together, and we got into what's called a scissors. And so we're going up, slowing down. Normally, the guy in the back seat is reading off airspeed to you. Well, this is the flight surgeon, so he's not telling me that speed. I'm sitting in the front. I'm looking outside all the time, because I need to know where that other plane is if I'm going to get behind him. And lo and behold, the plane went up, straight up, which just doesn't happen. He called. I looked down at the airspeed, and I'm way below what I should be, and I'm going to zero. Well, the plane goes up like this, and then it falls. I'm at about 40,000 feet. It falls. It starts doing this. I can't get it back under control. First thing's bold-face, right? Stick full forward, rudder and ailerons neutral. If you don't recover, maintain full stick forward and deploy the drag chute. So I waited till it nose came down, came up, because I wanted to get the nose down to get airspeed up to get enough so we could fly. I wasn't going to bail out. I wouldn't last at all in that water. Neither would the flight surgeon, who hasn't said anything. And so I deploy the drag chute. Finally, it starts doing this. It breaks off. We gain speed, gain control, and pull out at about 3,500 feet above the water. I can see the white caps and everything going. And all of a sudden, I hear from the back, "Stick forward." So that was my boldface story. Is that he'd been that whole time trying to either figure the boldface out or doing whatever as we went out of the sky. So that's my boldface story. But the boldface, the reason I say this is, in day-to-day business, we always everybody's got to-do lists and things you've heard about. This is the way you do business, and this is the things you should be doing. I consider my boldface in my personal life and in my business life, my boldface are things more that I shouldn't be doing. Business doesn't come where you can all of a sudden have this emergency and then you've got to do boldface that at that point in time. Business, things come at you all different directions. Things will come at different times. Some have immediacy to them. Others, you need to take your time and figure out what you're going to do, to do them right. These boldface that I'm going to go through have no particular priority of the first one's the most important. Everyone in business needs to look at their boldface items and have it as part of their culture. Is that because, and I'll speak to this as we go through the presentation here, is that most businesses don't survive. A lot of the businesses that I went in and bought weren't going to survive because they didn't have a boldface or a list of things in their culture and their business of what not to do. They just operated. They worried about what to do, what not to do. They just forgot about. Is that it should be modified based on whatever your business situation is. There are things you can add to the list or subtract. I could add 20 if I needed to today. But these are the ones that in every business that I saw that wasn't doing well or failing, they weren't looking at this. 40% of the businesses that start today are out of business in 6 months. In 1955, the Fortune 500 list, 87% of those companies are not on that list today. You can pretty well bet that in another 50 plus years, only 13% of the people who are on the list today are still going to be in business. So if your business is going to be sustainable, you've got to make sure, in my opinion, that you pay attention and create your own boldface. That your leadership, the people around you all understand it and say, this is part of our plan and our culture. Oops, I got the wrong direction. There we go. So that's the list you should have in front of you. Can you read it from there? Can you all see this okay? All right. So the first one I had is beware of arrogance and hubris. I see this almost, I'm going to say this about every one of these, but this is to me almost the number one thing that will take you down. Is that don't think that you're so successful because you are so great and you're better than everyone else and you know more than everyone else. Success comes with luck. It comes with economic cycles. It comes to you because of the people around you, not just you. And you cannot, the Greeks, they called hubris, they said excessive pride or conceit that often brings someone's downfall. It was a crime in Greek mythology. Is that Aristotle said young men and women and rich are hubristic because they think they're better than other people. You cannot go there. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a business and the former owner, we just bought it, they're better than everybody else. And the people right below them have the same attitude. It was taking their business down as the reason that we were able to buy them at such a great price. There's a very thin line, though, between confidence and being cocky. Used that word earlier today. Is that you can be confident. You can understand and say, I'm good at what I do. But don't be cocky about it and don't think that you got there because of just that. It's because of a lot of other factors that you're going to be successful in business. I had got the arrogance here. Here was the quote that I tried to come up with a little quote for each one of these. So the biggest troublemaker you'll probably ever have to deal with watches you from the mirror every morning. And then I have a list here of things that, arrogance on the left-hand side. You can just go through them real quickly. I'm not going to read this. I don't like to read slides to people. Is that, know what is better, deeply concerned about how people think of them, operates with directives, cultures, layers of bureaucracy. If you can't get to the leadership, both the people working in the company and the people outside, quickly, you got arrogance going on. Downplays competition. You know, they're not as good as me. I'm the best, so I'm not even going to worry about what they're doing. Big mistake. Resistance to innovation, new ways of doing business. Confidence, you can see the list there. Always on the lookout for competition and better ways. Promotes and appreciates input. Arrogant people don't appreciate input. You're not better than they are. Everyone feels comfortable with communicating directly with senior leadership. The company's constantly looking outside itself for better ways of doing business. There's a culture of learning. One of the things I was going to say later is that one other thing that I've always done is I read. And whether it's on the internet or whether it's a book or whatever it is, always trying to figure out a better way. I'm sure you guys mentioned Jim Collins in the school. Is that in business school? Jim Collins wrote a book called Good to Great, and it's a book that everyone who goes into business should read. Talks about the flywheel, talks about getting a business going, but I've always tried to skim the book. You don't have to read the whole darn thing. Just skim through it. You know, find some piece that applies to you. I've never read a book that I didn't learn something from. And you can read an internet article. I read the Wall Street Journal judiciously every day because there's lots of articles in there about business and way to do business, whatever. It's not just a newspaper. You know, it's more than that. So let me go to my next one, the next slide I have here this is a typical organizational structure. Y'all seen these before. I apologize because I did this PowerPoint myself. I don't have assistants anymore from my graphics department and marketing department. And so this next one, this is the way I like to think of myself as a leader. You can read upside down. I've always said no one works for me. I work for all of them. And every layer should be doing the same thing. They should be saying, look, because my job as the CEO, my job as the chief operating officer, my job as the head of a division, my job as supervising 3 people, was to make their job easier. That was my job. You know, I covered for them. I said, go ahead and make mistakes. If you make mistakes, I always had a culture of, if you're afraid of making a mistake, you're never going to learn anything. You're never going to do anything. So that, I made a habit, and I didn't do this my first 10 years of business. I did it after I learned, is that I work for them, they don't work for me. So I never said, this is my employee, this is the person who works for me, this is the whatever. This is the person who works with me. An arrogant or a hubristic person wouldn't do that. The next thing that I had on my list was, don't get caught up in the process and forget the product. And the quote there is, if everyone is thinking alike, someone isn't thinking. Excuse me, I got to my wrong page here. There we go. Okay. Is that a lot of businesses, especially ones that have been around for a while, and you see this in your personal life, you see it when you walk into a government agency, you see it when you walk into whatever, they'll tell you, well, that's what our process. And what happens is when you're just caught up in the process, there's no production, or it's slowed down. It's whatever. Let me give you an example. I walked into a bank, and I said I wasn't going to mention names, but it was a national bank that I had kept an account in, and I'd kept a balance in there so I didn't have to pay fees on it. They had a minimum balance requirement. And I only kept it open because that was my checking account, and I wanted to be able to, for the 4 years that I kept it sitting there, be able to go back to them and say, I'm a good customer, I need your help to get a copy of a check or whatever. And I didn't want to pay the $14 a month fees. So think of today's interest rates, you get nothing, $14 a month is a big number. Is that I walk into the bank after I've gone online and transferred the balance to zero to another bank, I walk in there to close because having been in the banking business, I said, you know what? If I don't close that, they're probably going to keep it open and charge me $14 a month. So I walk in there to close this zero balance account. I walk up to the teller. There's a manager on the right sitting in an office talking to somebody. The lobby is not even maybe this far to the wall. And there's a teller on the left, one teller with a lady sitting behind. I walk up and I said, look, there's no other customers. I just want to close this account. I said, I had it here for 4 years and now it's time to close it and it should be zero balance. She looked, took her a little bit to do it. She said, yeah, you're zero balance. So she said, well, but before you close this account, she said, you have to talk to the manager because we always want to know why people close their accounts. I said, well, that's a good policy. I mean, I can see the logic behind it. He said, so she does a little texting thing. She says, if you go sit in the lobby and have a coffee for a few minutes, he'll be finished. He shouldn't be very long, and you can talk to him and get your account closed. I walk over, I get my coffee. Finally, 10 minutes later, the customer walks out. He comes out, takes me into his office, sits down. All I want to do is get my account closed, my zero balance account closed, and get out of there. He says, have a seat. I said, no, I'm not sitting. I'm not here to have a conversation. I was nice. I said, I just want to close the account. So he starts going in the thing, and he looks. About 4 minutes, he's on the computer. He says, you know what? We can't close this account because you got a 2-cent balance. Said, all right, what do we do? He says, well, you got to go back over to the teller, and you got to fill out a withdrawal slip. You got to do this and do that. And I go back over, and I go back there to the teller, tell her what I got to do. She can't figure it out. She calls the person behind because she's never closed out a zero balance account with 2 cents on it. By this time, there's 4 people in line behind me who are all starting to laugh about this. I said, can you just donate the 2 cents? Can I sign something now? That was process, not product. And you see it all the time. You've seen it. Just think about your interactions in business. You do not want to have your business end up in having that kind of issue. He could have easily, I've been in the banking business. She could have easily said, I'll take care of it. We loved having you as a customer. Just go, we'll deal with the 2 cents. There was a donation thing for somebody sitting right there. I said, just put it in there. When you get the 2 cents. By the way, I'm keeping that 2 cents. I've got it in an envelope in my office to remind me, process, not product. So that happens all the time. To avoid that, you've got to have a culture of innovation, encouragement to find better ways, authority and accountability. The one thing you'll learn is you've got to give people responsibility, and you've got to make them accountable. You cannot make them accountable and not give them authority and responsibility. She should have had the authority right there to do what needed to be done, but she obviously wasn't. Here's another one. So that's the way we've always done it. Past success is no guarantee of future success. Every business that I've gone in that's had problems, this is what people told me. And why do you do this? Well, we've always done it. Have you thought about a better way? Or do you even try? No, we've always done it this way. It's worked for us. I said, well, hey, you tried? Oh, yeah, we tried other things, but they didn't work. And I go, why didn't they work? I don't know. Nobody's told us why. It just didn't work. So you don't ever just do that's the way we've always done it. That's like don't even say it. You need to be a company or a person or an individual that you're looking at new ways to do things. You know why a railroad is 56.5 inches wide today? Does anybody here know why? I like that one. I planted him. No, it's because the people who developed the rail lines in the U.S. were the people who came over from Britain, who built original tramways, and they built them the size of wagons. The wagons were built that size because of the ruts from the Roman legions. And the Roman legions, the reason that their war wagons were that wide was because It was the width of 2 horses' asses. That's why. And so nobody was thinking, is there a better way to do this? The space shuttle had to be built smaller because of that 56.5 inches, and the tunnel was too small to do it wider, even though the engineers wanted to do it that way. An example of that's the way we've always done it. That's the 7 most expensive words in business. Take some time, sit back, and ask if you're in startup or success mode. If you're in success mode, you think you're successful. You don't have to do anything, right? So you just keep doing it the way you've always done it. Don't be complacent. Have a culture of agility, flexibility, and challenge. Work on personal development. One of them's read. Don't fear failure. Accept change. Have zero-based management, and encourage critical thinking. Zero-based management. Have you ever heard that term? It's something that I've always used to make sure a lot of these things don't happen. Get in your business and pretend that you are starting over today. You don't have that staff. You don't have that physical layout. You're not in that location. You have nothing. If you had to do it over with all experience that you have and that you've learned from that business, you should start and say everything starts by justifying it if I would do it again the same way. Everything. Zero-based management. You're not going to go back and say that's the way we've always done it, are you? You're going to be thinking about a new way to do something. Be slow to hire and quick to fire. These two came to me this last week from 2 different people. One that I went to college with, high school with. He and I played in a band together. He was the drummer. We met in Hilton Head, and I was the lead guitar player. And he said, you know what I ask people? When I look at somebody in an interview, I say, and they've been there for all this time, I go, do they have 30 years of experience, or did they just do the same thing 30 years? 30 times. And then Zuckerberg from Facebook is the second quote. They ask him, what kind of people do you hire? And he says, I only hire people who I'd work for. I thought that was great. So many times you'll see, let me go back, is that you're judged by the people, you as a leader, you as a business person, you're going to be judged by the people you hire, but you're also going to be more judged about the people you don't fire. Because bad people are like bad apples. And I'm not saying they're bad, not personally bad. I've really met very few personally bad people in businesses I've been in. They're just not good at what they do. They're not as good as the rest of the people. They're not as good as they should be. And if you keep them on, the people who work with them are going, can't they see this? Can't that leader see this? You're going to be judged by this. Why are they keeping this person here? This person is taking me down. This person is not allowing me to succeed, especially if that person is supervising someone. So I've always said, and I learned this early, is be slow to hire and quick to fire. I was going to give you an example, but it's rather long, and I could do it later if you want, of an exact example that happened to me when I bought a company and went in and looked at the staff. Email and social media can be dangerous. I made this one up. It may sound stupid, but I was trying to figure out something that would relate, is that in today's world, everything that you put out there electronically, you better imagine that it's going to be available to someone to look at you 50 years from now, or 30. It is so easy to put yourself on Facebook, to put yourself on an email out there because you're angry, or you've had some drinks late at night, or whatever the situation is. Don't just always be wary of it. I learned this because of sitting in court and listening to someone who wrote an email that was completely innocuous, but the attorney took a piece of it out of context and basically used that as the reason to win the case. Because once it's there, you can't get it back. You cannot get it back. it's gone, is that email also in a business can be very time consuming. It's asynchronous, which means that you send it out at not maybe the same time the person who receives it or the group of people who receive it are dealing with the same issue. And how many of us, all of a sudden you get the ding, you get the whatever, and you go right to that email because you want to be real quick and responsive, or it's whatever, and it distracts from what you're doing. Email is a wonderful thing. All of the new electronic ways of transmitting and whatever are a wonderful thing. But you've got to be careful. Especially in business, reply to all. Reply to all is such a big time waster. You know, I would send an email out, and because I was the guy at the bottom of that list or org chart, you know, people would feel like all it was an information something, and people would say thank you, or they'd reply, and they'd do it to everyone. So everyone else said, I better thank because he did, and I don't want to look like the person who didn't thank me or whatever. And I see it all the time. So reply to all. I always say, am I wasting someone's time or am I not? And I can go through a number of other things, but I just think that you should be very careful about your email. Don't operate without a plan. And that, I think it was General Patton who said that quote up there, a bad plan is better than no plan at all. You cannot operate a business without a plan. Your business will not be sustainable. Is that it gets everyone in the organization on the same page. It's a way of communicating the vision. And it has a number of other advantages. When you're doing a plan, these things on the left are just some of the items you should be looking at. The benefits are on the right. If you're going to sell a business down the road and you have a plan in place, if I walked into a business, which most of them I didn't see any, and there was a plan there that plan explained the business and what the goals were and what the benefits or whatever were, it was much easier for me to make a decision to buy that company than the one over here didn't have anything that was sitting there. You need a plan to decide how you're going to spend capital, to understand the market, to understand competition, exit strategy. You should always think of the business. What's the plan? Is this a lifetime for you, or is this what is this? Tax avoidance and displacement, the last one on that list, is a big one. Does anyone know what displacement is? Displacement is when you spend time on something and it takes away time from something else that's more valuable. Everything that you do is taking away, is that on something that is not valuable, that is not a high percentage of profit for you, or whatever the situation is takes away from the time of the good things that you're doing. In the vacation rental business, I was speaking earlier to the group, we would have 5 owners of a home, individual owners in the vacation rental business, contracted with us to put their house on our program. We would do the maintenance, the marketing, the reservation, the housekeeping for it, the reservation system. We do everything for that homeowner. We would take a fee off the top and then give them a net number at the end. I'd have 5 owners of the same type, 5 separate owners of the same type of property. And this owner is just a problem. This owner, everything's wrong. They're not leaving the program. You can't even hardly force them out. But I'm spending 50% of my time on that owner when I should only be spending 20% of my time, which means I'm hurting the other ones that are sitting there. Or I could get rid of that and get 4 more. Took me a while to learn that one. And it applies to everything in business. Don't overanalyze. Good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of that comes from bad judgment. I call this analysis paralysis, and you've probably seen it before. And in business, you'll find companies that you go into, or you find yourself getting caught in situations where you're getting so much input and you're constantly doing it, is that you're doing it because your fear of making a mistake, when really you just got to make a decision to move forward. I want to read one quote to you. This was a definition of committees. There's a real danger of getting paralyzed is by trying to do things by committee or task force or group or whatever. It says, committees, I usually call these endless discussions, religious debates, because they have a lot in common with most discussions of religion and politics. They consist largely of people expressing strongly held personal beliefs about things that can't be proven, supposedly in the interest of agreeing on the best way to do something important, whether it's attaining eternal peace, governing effectively, or just designing the web pages. And like most religious debates, they rarely result in anyone involved changing his or her point of view. Besides wasting time, these arguments can create tension and erode respect among team members and can often prevent the team from making critical decisions. One of the things that I always did is that you find yourself wanting to get together with your peers. You find leaders who are out there saying, let's meet, let's talk about this. That meetings need to be brief, succinct, have a time frame in them, have a goal and agenda. There's one thing that I've seen in my years of business is meetings take up time. You know, when I used to sit there and say, look, there's 10 people in this room. I know what their salaries are. I know what the hourly rate is. This is costing me hundreds of dollars an hour of this meeting. Am I getting hundreds of dollars of value out of it? Analysis paralysis. You can see it in a company, fear of making mistakes, lots of meetings, power shift from operator. Well, I've gone, yeah. Is it meets timelines if you're moving forward, quick to learn from failure, and leadership is decisive. This next one I really like. If you're going to analyze your business, analyze it in pieces. Don't sit here and say, okay, here's the big items that are doing whatever, because you never know if you really break it apart what's happening in that business. I learned this again in the vacation rental business early on, because, and I'll go back to a similar example of what I just said. We would sit there and look and say, look, we've got 400 units. If we can get to 440, and then we would average our 400 units over the gross, divide that into gross revenue and say we're getting $50,000 a unit of revenue, and man, we're doing well. Let's get a few more and we'll get 50 for each one. Well, what happened was if you sat there and looked at that business, you had 1-bedroom units, you had 5-bedroom units, you had different units within the inventory. A 1-bedroom unit might bring us $20,000 or $800 a year, or $1,000 a year of net revenue to the company after expenses and whatever. And you'd have a house that generated $100,000 a year, $30,000. We spent the same amount of time for check-in, for reservations, servicing the guests as we did for the big one. We'd never looked at the business in pieces. So we started saying to ourselves, hey, whoa, we're going to get rid of those 1-bedrooms, and we're going to concentrate on going to get the big properties. That's what we should be doing. We shouldn't have all of these 1- and 2-bedroom inferior units here. I'm just use that as an example, because if you look at any business, the one thing I found was people had never taken their business down to the lowest common denominator and said, hey, what's the value part of my business, and what's the non-value part, and what's the one that's most profitable and what's the one that's not profitable? If your website is not the best, then your business will not be the best. It should be integrated in every part of your business. Y'all, you are young enough to know how important websites are. But it's amazing, again, how you go in and people don't. Your business, for example, in the vacation rental business, and even at St. Joe, it was every piece of our business. It's how we presented. It was our brochure. I'll go through this list right here. It's your marketing and sales. It's your operating system. Because you may have an operating system over here, but you got to present your inventory and everything else to the public. So it has to work with a website. So the website really drives what the operating system should be. Is it your customer support, your reservation systems, your staffing policy and procedure, all of those things and more. So your website should be the best, and you need to spend the time and the money on it. Have regular, meaningful financial reporting. If you can't measure it, you surely can't manage it. You wouldn't believe how many companies I went into that didn't do regular financial reporting. I ran a public company where they didn't even do monthly financial reporting when I showed up. They did it every quarter. And when they did it, the numbers came in at the end of that following month. So it was 3.5 months before they ever looked and see what, from the big picture, what was happening. You need to do meaningful financial reporting. And you need to get everyone involved in it. I always shared numbers, even if they were sort of secret or whatever. I shared them with everyone in the company. I had meetings and we talked about it, because financial reporting gets you, it'll point out, we're doing these things the way we always did it. All these boldface items come to the fore if you're regularly doing financial reporting. And lastly, know your competition. If you don't know your competition, you don't have a chance, because they're going to take you apart. You need to know what the market is out there. You need to know what other people are doing. You need to see if they're doing it better than you are. You need to see if you can plagiarize. You need to do whatever, because if you don't know your competition, you won't be around that long. So that's the end of my presentation, and I'd love to answer questions and interact, which is more important than me standing up here talking to you. Yes, sir. You want me to tell that one? We had bought this company. Oh, you mean the person that we let go? Oh, okay. No, we had bought this company, and I'm going to use the name Jane. And she had been at that company for 15 years. We bought the company because we were just beating their pants. I mean, we were taking their inventory and the whole thing. And all of a sudden they hired a new manager. He was good. And this new manager had slowed down the process of us taking over the units that they had. So we approached the ownership and bought the company. She'd been there 15 years. Going back to know your competition, I knew his staff. I'd researched, I'd talked to people, I'd taken them out for drinks, and I said, because I tried to hire some of them. And I always had people I knew in the competition. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, is an old saying. And so I said to him, I said, look, you are going to be in charge of the new company. The company we're buying was much bigger than ours. And so I said, you're going to have to, the biggest problem you're going to have is integrating staff and procedures. You're going to have to use our software. You're going to have to use our policies and procedures. And I said, I think you got a problem in Jane. I just want to tell you, because this is what I've sort of heard in the side, knowing my competition piece of it. He said, oh no, she's invaluable. I said, why? He said, she's been here 15 years. She's the most experienced. She knows the accounting system, the software system, or whatever. I said, okay. Because one thing I do is my personal philosophy is I let other people manage. I don't manage them. I don't hire people that I have to manage. Just don't do it. Hire people that manage themselves. And I said, it's your call. Let's see. Well, within a month, because now she was out of her comfort zone, is that he let her go. And he let her go, and after he let her go, we found out that she held information close to her chest. The new employees that came in, she didn't share it. She wanted to be the person that solved everything, so that she was indispensable. She wouldn't take revenge, but she would react if you went sideways with her, but she was able to leverage the position of hiding information that made her valuable. And after she was gone, people came up to him and said, what took you so long? What I talked about earlier. I was wondering what kind of leader you were, because you left her in place, that you didn't recognize what the problem was. We had owners who had left the program who called us up and said, we'd like to come back on because we were afraid she would take out retribution if we complained about her. So that's an example of saying that person had been in that place for 15 years. It only showed up when they got out of their comfort zone. But the employees knew it before. They usually know it way before you do. They'll know because they work with them every day. And I've seen that with managers out there in lots of different places, and it's the best thing you can do. And you may make a mistake, and remember, I said they're not bad people. They're good intent. They're just not the best. Is that if you keep people in place, you're only hurting yourself. If someone becomes indispensable, if you hear that word, you've got a problem, because everyone should have a backup plan in case they got in a bus accident or a car accident or somebody else. If you're in a business and someone's indispensable, they got leverage over you. You don't want to have that. You want to have everyone working as a team. So, yes. Vacation rentals are only, I went back because I was going to do a little history of write a book on vacation rentals. They're only, I think the first one I could find, first company or anything was in 1975 in Aspen. So it's fairly new business. Hotel business has been around for 2,000 years. Vacation rental is new. People, almost every company that we bought out west and a lot in the east, is that they were in the vacation rental business and they'd sort of morphed into it. They didn't have, and a lot of them were doing it the way we've always done it, the first day we opened, we've been doing it the same way ever since, is because what they were doing is they would be selling, and all these were in resort areas. You don't go in a vacation rental in a non-vacation place. Is they would sell a house or a condo, and then someone in town would pick up the rentals and say, well, I can rent it for you. And they slowly realized, hey, there's a revenue stream here. I can tell you, a 500-unit decent vacation rental company can net you $1.3 million a year. It's a big number. And you don't own the units. You don't have to own the office space. You don't have to own whatever. You're not buying the units. You're just managing the units for other people. And so real estate people finally realize that. And the other thing is real estate, you stay in real estate, you're going to go through a cycle, promise you, is that, which can be good and bad, but really good if you're prepared for it, is that vacation rental business is steady. When the times go bad, people don't go vacation in the islands, and they don't go to the ski in the Alps, and they don't do whatever. They stay within 500 miles of their home, and they load up the car, and they get groceries in it, and they go stay at a beach, and it's free. Even Disney World. I mean, what is it, $100 a person now just to get in? You have a family of 5, and then you got to eat, and then you got to have a room. You can go rent a really nice condo for $300-400 a night and cook in it, and the beach is free. So it's a great steady income, and it fits right in because the people who own those rentals bought from some real estate person, and then when they go to sell it, they come back to you. You're a natural. You don't get 3. No, okay. Yeah. It's so far it hasn't affected the business. The big one that's affected business is VRBO. Airbnb is really not that prevalent in resort areas. It's mostly in cities. It's a way to get into and replace a hotel room. Most resort areas don't have, other than the old, real traditional ones that have been around a long time, for example, don't have a lot of hotel rooms. So Airbnb hasn't affected that much. It's a good company. I mean, I wish I'd had that idea and started that. VRBO has been a real good competitor. And they're good people. I know the folks at VRBO. They're both. Yeah, they're both. Yeah. Be in watercolor where we was most recently we would have one-bedroom condo, we'd have a three-bedroom condo, we'd have a seven-bedroom home. They all varied, and they're not all in one location. Yeah. Well, St. Joe. You mean me personally? I go back and forth from St. Simon's Island to Watercolor, Florida, which is west of Panama City, near Destin. He's trying to stay in the U.S. You know, Wyndham, who bought our company, has a lot of units in Europe, and they operate by a different model, and they're doing very well with it. We tried, and anyone will tell you that you've got to get to a certain size. There were two things in the vacation rental business I wanted to get to. One was be profitable. That's the first one, which you can't do when you only got a few units. And usually I got profitable if I was doing most of the things myself, around 60 to 80 units. The next thing after I burned out was I wanted to have a 24-hour desk with somebody handling whatever, and that was usually about 300 or 400 units. A lot of resorts out there in the islands can't get that big. You know, there's just not that opportunity. And the other is the rules and regulations are so different, it just wasn't worth it. It works for Airbnb, it works for VRBO because they don't manage the units. So, yes.
Your presentations are very forward-thinking. We're behind all these big companies.
I'm trying to be as young as you guys, right? That's why I read, and I don't want you to get ahead of me. Okay.
We're behind all these big companies and stuff, and CEOs are around your age and stuff, and upper-level management.
Mm-hmm.
What's your gut feeling on like how many people these big companies that run the big companies are starting to think like that, rather than the opposite, the traditional?
You know what? Just look at the leadership, listen to them on their earnings calls, or if it's a public company, go ask other people and find out. It's going to be what's at the top. And so,
Starting to think like that?
I think that a lot of them are. I think a lot of younger CEOs are coming in that are doing, thinking that way. Is that I would say that a lot of this is recorded, right? I would say that a lot, it's more. The danger is when someone's owned their own company for a long time, that they're not prone to change. There's nepotism going on. That's another one that goes in, where the family's in the business and whatever. I don't know quite. I'm jumping around that one a little bit. Yes, sir. Well, we were building high-end condos. They're there today. We finished them, and they were just off of Park Avenue in Winter Park, Florida. Winter Park, Florida is sort of a higher-end area, and it's got lots of lakes. There's like 7 lakes connected there, and it had a lot of people who had been in the Orlando area, had migrated there, as they became successful, and had very large homes on these lakes. Well, they're getting in their 70s and 80s, and they don't want the big home anymore, and they want to be able to walk downtown and do whatever. So that was our market. It takes 5 years, up to 5 years from the time you buy the land to get your permits and get your drawings and to get it built so you supply a unit. So we started that project in 1979, and so in 83, 84, when we came out of the chute with finished units, the interest rates were 21%. Can you imagine? That stops everything. And so those people could not sell their home to anyone because nobody was going to pay a mortgage. A mortgage rate was like 16 or 17%. No one's going to buy their home. And that's what happened. It was the economy, the cycle. They're doing very well, those condos today. But it was a cycle. You know, a lot of people, if you look at it, a lot of people in the boom that went to 2006, they started their projects in 2002. And when it stopped at 2006, they were in the middle of construction. They hadn't, you know, it surprised a lot of people. Luck. You know, is that I didn't have any money, you know, so I was out there looking around, and I knew that I had expertise. I felt like I could sense value, and I had a person who said, if you find something, let me know. You know, I've worked with you in the past. I'll fund it. And when I found this hotel, it was this savings and loan, as I said earlier, in Waterloo, Iowa, that it was being taken over by the FSLIC. The FDIC was taken over FSLIC, and a lot was going on. At the closing table, there were 7 sets of attorneys for all these different entities to show you how complicated it was. But the more complicated it is, sometimes that's the biggest opportunity because other people won't wade through it. And I also got in the operation and doing my know the competition and know what's happening and buying a few people drinks and whatever. I knew that the people managing it were stealing from the savings and loan, that people were staying in units and paying cash back to the guys that were running the place. In fact, the FBI came in later on and was investigating them in some other places. My first FBI interview is that, and so I saw there was an opportunity, and I said, I can't afford to fund a loan for a long time, and I don't want, and I've represented to my business partner, who changed because a guy who was there locally after I got it under contract. You get a good deal under contract, you'll find people that'll help you with money. Money's not a problem if you create a good deal. I mean, everyone's looking. And that's the hardest thing to find out there, a good deal. So I created a good deal, and the deal was to put 2.5% down. I bought 60 units in Telluride, Colorado for $2.1 million. And I resold them, because we condominiumized it, and resold them for over 4. And that was our exit strategy. You know, I said, we're going to convert these, and we did that within 3 years. So, and the day one, we were positive cash flow because of the stuff that was going on in the company. Matt, does that, yeah. So. Yes, sorry. We had gone through an IPO roll-up, and we had cash, and people knew that we were out there buying. So, yes, people were coming to us. In some cases, we went to them because we wanted to be in that market. We needed to be in various markets. We tried to buy companies that had the problems that I've gone through here, because if they were there, then there was a real opportunity. We tried to buy companies that, that's not me, is it? But I thought I turned it off, sorry. Is that we tried to buy companies that we could bring our processes and procedures to, to get more profit out of what they had. We tried to buy companies that were in locations we were already in that we could, put together and reduce the staffing and locations and everything else. So that was our strategy. But I'll tell you one thing that I learned from that process is I was not the original acquirer when we first started. We bought about 6 or 7 companies. And I went from the Western Regional Manager to the COO. And so I was still in the beginning the Western Regional Manager. And I wasn't in there negotiating the purchase price and looking at doing all of the due diligence. And that was a huge mistake. You got to have the people running the business who are going to end up running it, doing the due diligence, because they got to have if you want to be accountable, it's like Dick Cheney said, if you want me there at the landing, have me there at the takeoff. Is that you have to have operational people involved in an acquisition strategy. You can't just all of a sudden say, here's the acquisition specialist, and if they're not involved with the people that are going to end up with it, you got a problem. And our first few acquisitions had a real problem because of that. But after we got operations involved, it went really well. Yes, ma'am. Oh yeah, it was the last one of the slide. I had it here, so that's not dangerous. There. Pretty hard, isn't it? No, I'm serious. I love doing this, and if you want to email me and ask a question, hey, I got lots of time now, so yeah.
Did you ever do any vacation rentals in like Frederica over by St. Thomas?
No, there's no rental units over there. Yeah. Those are all big, expensive homes that people own and don't rent out. And so, yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. To you. Remember, I'm at the bottom.